I mean, your degree never paid us back anyway. That's what my dad said when I asked where the $30,000 on my credit card went. My mom didn't even look up from her wine glass. She smirked and muttered, "We used it on Real Family. My name is Rachel. And from wherever you're watching this, stay with me. Have you ever looked into your parents' eyes and realized you were nothing more than a transaction? Because that's the exact moment I knew I was just a walking wallet in my own home. It was the night before my 29th birthday. I had just gotten home from a client dinner, exhausted, heels in my hand, makeup cracked at the edges. My phone buzzed. Bank alert. Credit card declined. I blinked. I didn't even remember using it that day. I opened the app. With $30,218.91. I froze. It was 10:43 p.m. My heart pounded like I was about to uncover something I couldn't unsee. I scrolled through the charges. Flights to Cabo. A $7,400 jewelry store charge. Rental SUVs. Some weird pet spa in Malibu. Every transaction felt like a slap. I ran downstairs. My parents were in the living room watching reruns. My dad's feet were up on the ottoman like he hadn't just emptied my life out behind my back. "Did either of you use my credit card?" I asked, trying to keep my voice from shaking. My mom didn't answer right away. She just raised her eyebrows like I was being dramatic. And then my dad chuckled and said those words. "Your degree never paid us back anyway." I stood there stunned. Like, was I supposed to apologize for being responsible? For graduating summa cum laude? For covering the groceries, the property taxes, and every emergency room visit the past 4 years? I laughed. Just once. A cold, breathy thing. I looked at them, these people who raised me, and realized they didn't see me anymore. Or maybe they never did. I asked one last time. "Why would you do this to me?" My mom set her glass down, turned her head slowly, and said with an icy little smirk, "Because you're not married. No kids. You're not struggling. You've had enough. We used it on Real Family." Real Family. The same Real Family, who never paid back a dime of the medical bills I fronted for my little cousin's surgery. The same ones who borrowed my car and never returned it until I had to report it stolen. The same ones who ignored my birthday for the last 2 years straight. I didn't cry. I just nodded, turned around, walked upstairs, and shut the door. Then I opened my laptop. And I started working quietly while they sat downstairs laughing at my expense. They didn't know I co-owned the house. They didn't know the loan they just took from my brother's restaurant had my name on it. And they sure as hell didn't know I'd spent the last 3 months preparing an exit plan. See, I'd always been the silent backbone. But spines can snap. And when they do, the whole body collapses. The birthday candles hadn't even been lit yet. But I was already planning the fire. I didn't sleep that night. I didn't need to. I'd been training for this kind of betrayal my whole life. They just didn't know it. At 3 a.m., while the house creaked inside, I pulled up the documents I'd quietly collected over the last few years. The loan agreements. The property deeds. The family trust my grandfather had left. The one my father forgot to mention still listed me as a beneficiary. You see, while they were using my card like it was Monopoly money, I'd been building a paper trail that could snap them like twigs. I started with the house. The one we all lived in. The one they told everyone they worked so hard to keep after Grandpa passed. The truth? Grandpa had put it in a trust. And after he died, half of it was mine. I never said anything. I let them act like it was theirs. Let them lord it over me every time I asked to host something or have a friend over. But tonight, I drafted a quitclaim deed transferring my half to a holding company I'd created 6 months ago, named after my childhood dog, Scout. Ironic since they abandoned him too. Next, the loan for my brother's failing taco bar. The one I co-signed. My dad begged me for it, said it was for family. Said I was successful enough to help. I pulled up the documentation. The clause was there. If I withdraw as co-signer, the bank can call the full amount, $214,000, due immediately. My hands didn't shake. I just clicked, submit. And then came the last move. The family phone plan, the Netflix account, the joint Costco card, the health insurance rider they slipped my mom onto without asking. I terminated it all. Quietly. Efficiently. By the time the sun rose, the system they'd leaned on for 4 years was gone. But I wasn't done. At exactly 8:01 a.m., after confirming my dad was at the golf course and my mom had left for her Pilates class, I walked out the front door with nothing but a backpack and my laptop. I left my key on the foyer table. No note. No tears. Just silence. The kind that hurts more than any scream. I drove to a quiet coffee shop downtown and opened the family group chat. The same group where they'd shared every brunch photo and vacation selfie, and never once wished me a happy birthday. I typed one sentence. You treated me like a wallet. Now learn to live without it. Then I attached the transfer documents. The co-signer withdrawal. The insurance termination letter. The full screenshot of their $30,218.91 spending spree, labeled line by line. And then I left the group. Blocked every number. Changed every password. Moved every dollar into a separate trust. By 9 a.m. I'd vanished. But by noon the calls started coming in from my aunt. Then my uncle. Then my brother. Panic. Desperation. Fake confusion. Rachel, be reasonable. Your dad didn't mean it. What are we supposed to do now? I didn't answer. Because the truth was, they never wanted me. They just wanted access. And access had expired. The voicemails piled up like junk mail on a doorstep. Each one more frantic than the last. Rachel, it's your mother. This is childish, call me back. Rach, Dad's freaking out. Please just talk to him. Rachel, what you've done is cruel. Heartless. We're your family. Funny. I used to believe that too. But I was finally learning. Family isn't who shares your blood. It's who doesn't watch you bleed. I muted them all and ordered a chai latte. By afternoon my phone was flooded with unknown numbers. Turns out my brother's business loan had been flagged within 2 hours of my co-signer withdrawal. The bank froze the restaurant's assets. Creditors were already circling. I guess serving soggy tacos to drunk college kids doesn't cover a $214,000 debt. Especially when you're also driving a leased Escalade and employing your girlfriend as a social media manager. Meanwhile, back at the house I'd walked away from, the situation had gone nuclear. The deed transfer I initiated? It was legally airtight. Half of the house now belonged to a holding company that didn't recognize either of my parents as residents. At exactly 3:32 p.m., my attorney delivered an official notice. They had 30 days to vacate or negotiate a rental agreement. The same home my father used to boast about owning outright at dinner parties. Now suddenly they were squatters in what used to be their kingdom. The best part? The only option they had to keep the house was to pay me rent. I didn't gloat. I didn't post anything online. No passive-aggressive quotes. No vague Instagram stories. Because when people show you who they are, you don't clap back. You build your silence into a monument and let them sit in its shadow. That night I booked a quiet Airbnb near a lake. 1 bedroom. Wood-burning stove. No TV. I poured a glass of wine, opened my journal and finally let the stillness sink in. For 4 years I'd been the scaffolding holding their world up. They called me ungrateful. They said I contributed nothing. But what they didn't know was that even scaffolding has its limits. And when you tear it down, the whole structure shakes. At midnight I opened one final message. It was from my father. All it said was, "You've destroyed this family." I stared at those words. Then whispered to no one. No. You just never realized I was the only thing holding it together. The next morning I woke up to a storm of missed calls from my dad's boss. Turns out, when a man maxes out his daughter's credit card and loses his home title in a day, it becomes hard to focus during board meetings. Especially when that man's daughter also happens to be the silent financial advisor behind the firm's biggest contract. Let me explain. When I graduated, I didn't just walk into a job, I built one. I became a forensic auditor. The kind who can track dirty money with a spreadsheet and a pen. And one of my clients was my father's employer. They never knew we were related. I never mentioned it. Too risky. But when the CFO called to ask why my father had been distracted, visibly shaken, and suspiciously requesting early access to retirement funds, I didn't say a word. Just submitted my formal withdrawal as a financial consultant. 3 hours later, their biggest merger paused indefinitely. And my father? He was invited to take some personal time. The dominoes were falling exactly as I knew they would. Because I hadn't just pulled support from under him, I'd also removed the protection that came with my name. My silence was his exposure. That afternoon I got a voicemail from my mom. Her voice didn't sound mocking anymore. Cracked. She didn't even bother with "Rachel, please." Just, "What are we going to do? How could you be so cold?" Cold, Mom. Cold was laughing when I asked about the $30,000. Cold was calling me a placeholder until your real kids needed help. Cold was selling off my trust fund behind my back because you didn't need it anyway. This was mercy and steel. And yet, part of me still ached. Because you don't spend 30 years calling someone mom and just switch it off like a light. The grief wasn't gone. It was just buried beneath the betrayal. That evening I received a letter from the bank. My withdrawal as co-signer triggered immediate loan default. My brother's taco bar was officially in collections. The landlord padlocked the place the same night. They posted a picture online of him screaming in the parking lot, covered in salsa and shame. Me. I sat at the edge of the lake, feet in the cold water, listening to birds, sipping tea. Not because I was heartless, but because peace is the best kind of revenge. Let them scramble. Let them taste the hunger they once fed me. They'd spent years feasting on my silence. Now they'd starve in the echoes of it. And still none of them said sorry. Because some people don't want reconciliation. They want reinstatement. And I had no intention of going backward. 3 weeks passed. Not a single apology. Not a single admission. Just more guilt-tripping voicemails, more messages dripping in entitlement. As if I owed them comfort after they bled me dry. Then the knock came. I was back in the city, stepping out of my building's elevator, arms full of groceries, when I saw him. My father. Standing outside my office door, eyes hollow, suit wrinkled, hair gray in places I'd never noticed. He looked like a man who'd been cracked open and poured out. "Rachel," he said, voice barely above a whisper. "Please, talk to me." I didn't. I just unlocked my office, stepped inside and shut the door. I didn't slam it. Didn't curse. Didn't even flinch. Because nothing haunts the guilty like quiet indifference. He sat outside for an hour. Maybe more. Crouched against the wall like some broken monument to a past he never cherished until it stopped saving him. I didn't check on him. Not once. Instead, I opened my laptop and began writing a new proposal for a youth fund. One that would help girls like me. Girls who held up their families only to be treated like scaffolding. Invisible until removed. That proposal got approved in 3 days. Funded with $100,000 in private capital. And when the press release came out, the headline read, "Former co-signer turns survivor. Rachel Bennett's Financial Justice Project launches in D.C." I didn't send it to them. But I know they saw it. Because the next message from my brother didn't say, "Come home." It said, "So this is how you make yourself look like the hero?" Still no apology. Still no accountability. They weren't sorry. They were embarrassed. There's a difference. They didn't miss me. They missed the version of me who would have paid the bills they racked up. The version who stayed quiet while being mocked, used and drained. But she was gone. Buried beneath every overdraft alert, every snide laugh, every birthday skipped, every credit line abused. Now they had to face who they really were. Without me there to cushion the fall. So when my phone rang that Sunday morning and my aunt's name flashed on the screen, I picked up. She was the only one who ever truly saw me. Her voice cracked as she said, "I heard everything, baby. You did what they thought you'd never do, you chose yourself." I couldn't speak. Just breathed. Because sometimes, healing isn't loud. Sometimes it's a whisper between women who've survived the same kind of wound. I stood by the window that afternoon watching the city hum beneath me. And for the first time in years I didn't feel invisible. I felt seen. A month later I got a certified letter in the mail. My mother was suing me. For emotional damages. I sat on my living room floor, the paper shaking in my hands, not from fear, but rage. After everything they took, everything they said, everything they did, they wanted to punish me for walking away? I read every word. She called me vindictive. Said I manipulated financial systems to humiliate my family. That I intentionally sabotaged my brother's career out of jealousy. Jealousy? The same brother who stole my card, mocked my job and couldn't run a business without free money? I should have been shocked. But I wasn't. This was textbook narcissistic retaliation. I called my attorney. "Rachel," she said, skimming the document, "this isn't a lawsuit. It's a tantrum in legalese. You're fine. Still, I had to respond, legally and emotionally. So I drafted a letter of my own. Not for them but for the judge. I laid out a timeline of every financial support I'd given. Bank statements. Mortgage payments. Tuition I'd paid for my brother's summer classes when he failed his way through community college. The $8,000 I gave my mom when she couldn't make rent. Even though I later learned she was lying, she wanted a new kitchen backsplash. I attached it all. Documented. Undeniable. The lawsuit was dropped in 2 days. But the damage? It was generational. Not just mine, theirs. Because word got out. My father's former boss read the court filing. He didn't take it lightly that one of his former employees used his daughter's finances like a private ATM, then tried to sue her for cutting the cord. By the end of the week, my father was blacklisted across the industry. My mom's side hustles dried up too. No more mompreneur Pinterest deals when everyone knew what she'd done. And my brother? Turns out the food vendor community is tight. They stopped doing business with him when they found out how he handled family. His Yelp reviews got brutal. One even said, "Good tacos, but tastes better when you're not stealing from your sister." Me. I got invited to speak at a university business ethics panel. I told my story with names redacted, and people cried. A woman my mother's age came up to me after and whispered, "I wish I'd walked away from my parents sooner. Maybe I'd have something left of myself." That night, I lit a candle in my apartment and just sat. No music. No noise. Just me. Because the silence that used to feel like abandonment now felt like freedom. They thought cutting them off would destroy me. But it saved me. They didn't raise a daughter. They raised a survivor. And now they had to live with what they lost. I wasn't prepared for the letter that came next. It wasn't legal. It wasn't demanding. It was handwritten. On the same cheap notepad my mom kept near the fridge when I was a kid, the one she used for grocery lists and passive-aggressive reminders. But this time it was a plea. From my father. "Rachel, we made mistakes. Your mom's been sick. Your brother's business is gone. We've lost everything. I never thought you'd actually walk away. Please, if there's any part of you that remembers the good, come home. We need you. I need you. Dad." I folded it slowly like it was something fragile. And I felt nothing. Not hate. Not love. Just a strange hollowness where once there had been fire. My mom followed up 2 days later with a voicemail. Sniffling, dramatic. "You think you're better than us now? You think cutting your family off makes you powerful? Well, guess what? You are just a burden. And you'll die alone." The irony. Even in her apology, she made sure I knew I was disposable. But their desperation was real. I started getting messages from extended family. My aunt in Florida. A cousin I hadn't heard from in years. They said my parents were begging for help. That the house was up for auction now that I'd revoked the cosign. That my brother was facing bankruptcy. One even said, "You could be the bigger person." But I had been the bigger person. For years. I'd poured myself dry while they drank and laughed and spat in my face. No. I was replenishing. Thriving. That same week I got promoted. VP of Finance. A job I'd earned, not because of connections, not because of luck, but because I had fought for it silently behind closed doors, while they told me I'd never be worth more than a receipt. And on my birthday, the day they used to forget, my new team surprised me with a celebration. Flowers. Cards filled with real human gratitude. One said, "You're the backbone of this place, Rachel. Thank you for everything you do." I stared at it for a long time. As that card? It healed something their cruelty had broken. That night I didn't cry. I didn't toast champagne or post anything online. I just sat on my balcony watching the lights of the city. The same city my parents said I'd never survive in. And I whispered to the night. I made it. Without them. And the wind carried it back like a prayer finally answered. I never spoke to them again. Not even when my father showed up outside my office building 6 months later. Slouched on the marble steps in a suit that didn't fit, holding a photo of us from when I was 10. He looked smaller. Not just older, deflated. When I stepped out, security clocked him immediately. They knew what I'd been through. One stepped forward, but I held up my hand. I walked past him. He scrambled to his feet, blocking my path. "Rachel," he whispered. "Please." I paused. Not out of pity but power. "I know I failed you," he said, voice cracking. "I let your mother talk me into things. I didn't protect you. I should have stopped her. I should have stopped me. My silence made the sidewalk louder somehow. Cars' footsteps wind, all waiting. He reached into his coat pocket and pulled out something small. A birthday card. This one wasn't typed. It wasn't sarcastic. He said, "I'm sorry I ever made you feel unwanted. You were the only one holding us up. And we broke you. But I wasn't broken anymore. I used to wait for this," I said softly, meeting his eyes. "Every birthday. Every holiday. Every time I got promoted. I waited for you to see me." He nodded, eyes brimming. "But now." I took a breath. "Now I see me. And that's enough." I handed the card back. "I hope you find peace, Dad. But I'm not your rehab." And I walked away. Thought he might yell, "Chase, plead." He didn't. He just sank to the concrete steps, head in his hands. And I didn't turn back. Because the final stage of healing isn't confrontation. It's indifference. In the months that followed, I bought my own place outright. No cosigns. No emergency withdrawals. No strings. I changed my number. Deleted the old family photos from my cloud. Not out of hate but clarity. And on my next birthday I booked a flight. Just me. No guilt. No should we invite them? I stood on a quiet cliffside in Maui at sunrise. Alone. Alive. Free. A woman nearby offered to take my picture. I smiled, nodded. And as I looked into the camera I thought, they lost their daughter the day they treated her like a transaction. But I didn't lose myself. I reclaimed her. Brick by brick. Scar by scar. And the silence they left behind became the loudest proof of my strength.